All right, we'll go ahead and start the budget work session. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
I apologize. I sent out an email today, quick, with the updated information. At the last meeting we had discussed, we had that roughly $53,000 that we were looking at as possibly a levy decrease for next year. And we had discussed that because of where the savings were coming from that would allow us to do this, which was with the bond refundings, one of those bonds, one of the other sources of revenue to pay off that one bond was also transfers from the water fund. So he said one of the other options we could look at is instead of lowering the levy by that 2.3% is we could look at using a portion of that money to lower the transfer from the water fund. So I did run the numbers on that. The first one I emailed you today wasn't right. I'm not sure exactly what I did wrong, but it wasn't right. So Jeff came in and talked about something else, and he was asking for some money out of this, and I said, well, there can't be that much money available. And so he was right that if you would have read it right, there was more money available for him. But when he said the number, I said, that can't be right. And so he was right, maybe look at it again, and I found out that for whatever reason, I was off on that. So basically what we've come up with is this. So we've got that roughly $53,000. If we would reduce the transfer from the water fund to this debt service fund by $25,000, our water rate increase next year to be 2.5%, and then our levy would decrease by 1.2%. If we wanted to hold our water rate increases at 0 next year, we'd have to transfer the $50,000 over, and that would basically leave our levy flat. I mean, 0.13%. You know, what we're looking at is $53,000 as far as the levy reduction. So if we take 50 of it, our levy would go down by about, well, a little over $3,000 next year. So it's 0.13%. So not a ton. And if we didn't do anything in reviewing the water fund balances, we would, instead of a 10% increase, we now look at, with our bond refundings and stuff like that, about a 5% moving forward for the next few years at least before that drops again. So if we did nothing, the water rate increase would be 5% next year, and then we would reduce our levy by that 2.3% that we talked about at the last meeting. So those are kind of the three options to look at and decide kind of what you want to do. Now, don't forget that we can't keep the water rate increase at 2.5 or 0 for multiple years. It just doesn't work out that way. We just had some savings this year that we could use, or I should say savings for next year that we could use, but moving forward, we would have to look at going back to probably a 5% increase, you know, in the future years, although it would be 5% off of less. So that's always good. You know, you're basing your increase off a smaller number again in the future. But you know, we would probably look at going back to that. But like we've said, we always review those rates every year to determine, you know, what we need to do for the coming year. So it could be a little different, but this would be just like the levy. We can't guarantee if we keep the levy at 0 or lower it that we're going to be able to do that again next year. So it would be the same situation with this water fund. It would be that we could do kind of a one-time reduction in what we would need to do as far as a rate increase. But back in 2014, we'd have to take a look again at following the plan.
Are you factoring in future rates on the businesses that will be here, that will be paying?
We've got growth factored into our long-range capital plans, so we do assume that we'll see some increases in our users as new businesses come in and things like that. So those are all factored in long-term. Yep.
Okay.
Aaron, are you factoring in this additional person in a license bureau too?
Yep, that's included in this.
And I wanted to ask you, this might be kind of a dumb question, but when we hired the tech person here, part of the question when we hired that person was if we had enough to keep them busy full time, and how would we budget that, make it all work? Is this something that the tech person could fill in and help us out? Is he that busy now? Or instead of hiring this extra person, he could pick up some slack in there? Or
He's actually busy enough that we don't think that he would be able to do that in the license center.
Well, I'm kind of intrigued by the middle of the road, the 2.5 water increase and a levy decrease of 1.2. That would be my choice if it came to that.
Would be my choice also.
Yeah. I mean, we get the best of both worlds there. I mean, we get a decrease in the water rate increase for this year and a levy decrease, and then if we do have to go higher next year, I mean, we're starting at a lower number, even if it was higher than 5%. And we're still starting at a lower number than what we would be.
The one thing, Robbie, I got a few questions for Aaron, and I think it'll all the same lines you guys are. The one thing that bothers me with this budget stuff, Aaron, whenever we get to this, is I do the Irish math, and then I come along and I read the math that's on them papers. And what baffles me every year is, in the last year, I was so excited about the bonds that you guys took care of and got us a cheaper interest. We added about 50,000 there. We had 60,000 left over from last year's budget, and we had some couple other small things. And I can tell you that as this stuff was happening, I was sitting here thinking, wow, this is going to really help us out with the budget next year. And yet, basically, when we figure everything out, we came out 200,000 short. And I always keep listening to you and say, well, this happens and that happens and this, but when we had our audit, he said we had a $60,000 surplus. When we basically sit here and do the bookwork, we're $200,000 short. So this is where the Irish math and that math don't come together. I don't understand it.
Well, we're not 200,000 short anymore. That was our preliminary levy, and we've come up with $250,000 in reductions from that preliminary levy. And, you know, and again, it's always kind of the same deal, where last year we thought, you know, our preliminary levy was, you know, so much more, and then at the end we lower it down. But, you know, this year we come up with 200,000 more than we spent last year, but we had 100,000 in seal coating, which was not in the budget at all last year. We had the debt service that got added on for the West Side project. You know, we factor in high personnel costs, you know, a lot of, you know, increases in utilities, all that stuff. So all of a sudden you got this big cushion of all of a sudden, you know, 200,000, but, you know, to be honest, 140, I think, thousand of that was between the seal coating and the new debt service. So the majority of it was that, and then just the other stuff, you know, where our usual aim high, because we don't want to be surprised. And then at the end of the year, when you see an audit that comes in where we actually are, we were 60, we spent, or, you know, whatever, we were 60,000 under budget, you know, generally, again, what we try to do is when we do make our budgets, even though we've been trying to keep things as tight as possible, we still try to budget conservatively, because we don't want to be on the other side of that. You know, I don't want to get the audit back at the end of the year and says that we lost $60,000 on the year. That can happen. I mean, things come up, things run over, you have a bad winter, whatever, you have more expenses. That can happen, but our goal is always to be conservative enough that we get to zero. You know, we want to, it would be great at the end of the year, the audit said we balanced out exactly and we got to zero. We didn't lose any money, we didn't make any money, we were right on. You know, that's pretty tough to do with just so many inconsistencies of what can happen in the year. So we've been lucky enough that we've been conservative where we've been coming on the positive side at least. But I can't promise that forever. There could be some years where we come back and we might have, you know, lost 50, 60,000 on the year because of whatever. So hopefully long term, those all balance each other out. But like we've talked about, there's, you know, you see the budget, there's just so many line items and there's so many things that we do, we can't be exact. I mean, we just can't know for sure what everything's going to cost and how exactly everything's going to work out for the year. So we do our best to give you guys a number that we're pretty darn certain is going to happen. We can do everything that you want us to do for this number, and we can do it within what you think are reasonable limits for our levy, and in this case, it's zero or less again. So I can't promise you that it'll be zero next year where the numbers will all, you know, add up. We may at the end of the year in the audit see that we got 20,000, you know, more, 20,000 less, who knows? But we hope we're close. I mean, that's what our goal with it is. So the math will never be right on. You know, we'll try though.
You know, for the council, I talked to Aaron about this today too, is that in some ways, this budget cutting is good and everything is the right thing to do. But I'll give you a little example of last week. I came down the hill And one of our city guys with our new red water tanker truck from the fire department was making a left in front of the First Farmers Bank. As I was coming down the hill, I was watching, and they had their blue lights on at top, and it was confusing people. 2-3 cars were pulling over and waiting. They thought it was a fire truck. And another car just buzzed right out through like he wasn't even there, and I assumed they knew it was Public Works, not the fire department. So I talked to Tom about it first and said, wow, we gotta paint that thing or do something, because that's a real safety issue. There's also an issue over at Amesbury that the guy's been fighting for years. Tom's got it in the budget for 2015, but every time we have a large rain or any kind of a storm system, the first thing the guys have to do is go over to Amesbury loading dock and put a pump in there, because we failed to put the right system in there and it doesn't drain right into that pond over there. And Tom and I have discussed that is a safety issue. When the guys do have a crisis like our flood, here they're worried about a stupid loading dock and gotta put a pump in there instead of worried about what's going on out here. I keep telling Tom, you gotta fix that. You can't have that hanging over you all the time. So I told Aaron, in some ways, everybody tries to cut their budget as slim as they can to try to keep it down, and that is appreciated. But some of these things like this are so ridiculous that they need to be fixed and addressed.
Well, that was one of the engineering marvels of the century, that when they did that. I don't know what they
terrible.
were,
It's just
I don't know what they were thinking. I pass it every day to and from my place, and it's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
And some of the guys, the Public Works people, will talk to me about it, actually get so angry over it. And we're at the point now where we should be done getting angry, we just gotta fix it, deal with it. So there's little things like that I want all of our managers to, keep our budget down, do the best you can, but don't ever let safety or anything like that get in the way.
Okay, any other discussion? Not, we can just go with a consensus on, from everybody. All in favor of number 1?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep. Looks like everybody is, I'll be happy with the transfer by 25,000, decrease the water rate by 2.5%, and reduce the levy by 1.2%.
Okay, we'll put all the information together for the next council meeting. At that meeting, we'll also have time for any public input on the budget if they'd like. And we'll also, since we've got the final numbers together, we'll present you the updated financial management plan that'll show the, kind of what's going to happen next year, and then long-term, how things look. Again, estimates, but we'll present that. And then also we'll officially have you guys decide on the utility rate increases at the next meeting. So we'll also have the long-range kind of financial plans for the utilities. With this, it looks like the recommendation is going to be, we're still unfortunately need 10% for sewer. We'll do the 2.5 for water, and then our storm sewer also will be 10%. And the reason we've been doing that with the storm sewer is we're using that for all these projects. We've got a lot of storm sewer work in town, and it's really helping cover that cost that otherwise we'd either have to levy against everybody or assess more on the property owners. So, to be honest, it's not a huge, hopefully impact on most homeowners and things. So some it is, some, businesses it is, but it is helping pay for these projects that we really need done. So the recommendations are going to be 10 for sewer, 10 for storm, and 2.5 for water. But we'll have the long-range financial plan for you to look at so you can see why we're still saying that. And we'll probably have to, if things don't change, continue down that road for at least probably another 3 years. And after 2016, we should see that then drop off significantly from what we've been having to do. But we'll finally be caught up then. But you never know. If things get better, we had dry year this year and the water fund did great. So that really helped with honestly, with even future increases, just because of that. So we'll have a lot of these sort of spreadsheets for you guys next time to enjoy and look at, and we'll go through all those and be able to review it. But yeah, we'll have all that ready for the next meeting.
Okay. That, take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.